and I got to tell you, it was a ton of fun. Like 20 kids on a screen. Obviously, it would have been better in person, but having them all on the screen was a treat too. And I figured out how to get a copy online of the book I was going to read so that I could share it and they could see the pictures. I mean, what's a Dr. Seuss book without the pictures? So it really went well.
Speaking of the doctor is in.
All right, I'm going to start the meeting just because my guest reader starts at 1. So I want to get going. If that's okay with everyone. Thank you. This is Jennifer Iller, Vice Chair of the Nantucket School Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Pauline Proch, Chair.
Aye.
Zona Butler is not here yet. Tim Lepre. Tim Lepre. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Steve Sordovic, Secretary.
Yep.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Superintendent Elizabeth Hallett.
Here.
School Committee Clerk Logan O'Connor.
Hello.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This open meeting of Nantucket School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020. Due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of the public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will adjourn to a workshop and not feature public comment. For this meeting, the Nantucket School Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom webinar app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. May I have a motion to open?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
By roll call.
Sorry. Yeah, roll call. Thank you, Steve. Steve Sordovic.
Aye.
Pauline Proch.
Aye.
Tim Lepre. Tim Lepre.
Aye.
May I have a motion to adjourn to a workshop session? Pauline Proch.
Aye.
Tim Lepre.
Aye.
Steve Sordovic.
Aye.
I'd like to call to order the workshop session for November 24th. May I have a motion to approve the agenda? Pauline.
So moved.
Tim.
Second.
Steve.
Aye.
Thank you. First up, school committee goals. Steve and Beth.
Yeah, I don't know how you want to start this. I assume you all now have gotten copies. Logan, did the last copy I send you have the whole document? Are you attempting to open it in anything other than Microsoft Word?
I don't know if there's any other column on the right side past evidence, because the evidence column is cut for me. So I just need to get it sent in a PDF form so that it doesn't change any pagination.
Okay, I can do that, I think, but every time I make changes to it, I'll have to re-PDF it and send it out.
That's fine.
What I've tried to do, or what I've done, is move the status column over to the left. You won't see much near the top, but if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see there's quite a few entries for budget and so forth as we move along. I did that for two reasons, putting it on the left. First of all, because the status column on the right had such bizarre formatting and I could not get rid of it. So I started a new column on the left, which allowed me to use normal formatting. I also thought, though, that it's more efficient or easier to follow if you can scroll down on the left-hand side where it's right next to what the basic goal is. And then I went back through, we talked about going back to agendas from the beginning of the school year. So the first meeting we had was on September 2nd, and I went through all of the agendas between the 2nd and I don't think today, and entered in pithy form the entries on the agenda that seem to match up with the goals that we have set. I didn't always put everybody's name. If it was a budget update, I didn't really think it was necessary to mention Martin. Sometimes I mentioned Beth because it was from her report, superintendent's report, and sometimes I didn't. Obviously, all of that, when you have a chance to review it in more detail, is subject to any changes you may suggest. But this, to me, seemed to be the most efficient way to do this. It's not in, I think when we discussed it previously, we discussed not having any kind of full detail for each of the entries, just reference to it. And that way we can always go back and look at the actual agendas or the videos of the meetings, et cetera, et cetera. All that is open to whatever you think. And trust me, the formatting on this is a bear. I tried to get it into and to use Google Docs so that we could create it as a shared document, which is what Pauline and I originally proposed, but it made all the formatting wacky. So for the moment, until maybe I can get some help from the tech people, it's a Microsoft Word document. It's all there, believe it or not. You might have to shrink the size of your print or scroll the scroll bar at the bottom, but I removed the status column on the right. So all you should have is the current, new, let me look at it again, status, objectives, indicators, and evidence. And I will, now that I see that it carries over farther, I'll pull the actual, like where it's goal one, leadership goes beyond the edge of the table. I'll pull that stuff back over eventually. I don't have enough hair left to keep pulling it out, trying to fix all this formatting when I was messing with this, not in one sitting anyway. So I'll adapt it more, and we'll try to figure out why Logan can't see the whole thing. Can the rest of you see the whole document all the way to the right?
Yeah,
I can.
I do.
Okay.
Steve, thank you so much. This is a lot of work. I really appreciate it.
It is something I used to do. I had to remember some old things. You know, I don't use Microsoft Word as much as I used to, but I did try, and it feels right to me. It hit me as a brainstorm over the weekend to move over to the left and to be pithy. So if you want it to be less pithy, and the updating, assuming that y'all don't want to add too many things that I've missed or that you think we ought to be putting in there, the updating should be pretty easy because it'll just be one meeting at a time. once we have everything in, going back to September 2nd, and as each meeting takes place, I can go in and add, what we did at that meeting, and that part is simple. I won't tell you what I'll have to do to the formatting. Trust me, it'll be a pleasure after having gotten all this out of the way.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions or comments, Beth?
Thank you. So I have actually made in the last hour, I've tried to make a few formatting changes. So I do have a document that I can share with everyone in Word format that I think puts everything in the correct place. I'm happy to share it if people would like to see it up on the screen. I can do that if you'd like.
Any comments? I can see it fine on my device, so it's not necessary on my behalf. Anyone else?
I don't understand. Beth, if I understand you correctly, you've taken the document I created and made some changes. So
Yep.
I don't know how Jen could be seeing those.
So the only changes I made were to adjust. I also had the same problem with Logan in Microsoft Word that the column was cut. So I just adjusted it a little bit. So it's all those are the only adjustments I did. No additions or subtractions to any of the text.
Well, if you want to send that to me, I'll make those same changes to the original document. What I'm going to do, or what I plan to do, subject to your approval, henceforth, is I will put a change date at the end of each file name. The file name will essentially stay the same, but at the end, every time major changes at least are made, I'll put the date of change. And that way we'll be able to know which is the most up-to-date version.
Thank you, Steve.
If
Logan?
I may, through you as the vice chair and the chair, I think what might be one of the issues as far as pagination is that Beth and I are most likely running a higher level of Microsoft Word. And so going backwards to you, Steve, is not going to help the issue. So I think if Beth and I can see it, you can do your updating. As you update, it should come to us and we should be able to take that and change it and save it up. But going backwards is not going to solve that issue. We have updates that happen all the time. So
Yeah, and I have not updated Microsoft Word since I bought this computer, which was
I think that's what
4
the
or
problem
5 years ago.
But it's less pagination and really more content that is important. So I don't think that we need to worry so much about.
Yeah, and I think if you're pulling it in, the only concern that I would have that you should watch for is if you're squeezing it, as it were, it might force some things down into extra pages, and we'll need to make sure that the particular columns that we're doing in the status in go with it. I think they will, but watch when it kicks to another page, what happens.
We trust that you're on this, Steve. Thank you. All right, do we want to move on to preliminary budget discussion? Fiscal year, Steve?
Sorry, did you call on me?
Oh, sorry. I thought Steve had his hand up. I just called on Steve. Sorry. Steve, do you have any comment? No. Pauline?
I just thought that maybe today's meeting we could take a look at the goals and see where we feel that we are on track, or I just think it's a good opportunity to gauge our measurements as we're halfway through the year.
Oh, sure. Sure,
Sorry
absolutely.
about my voice.
So feel free to speak. Anyone? Steve?
What am I speaking about?
Oh, I thought you had your hand up. I see your hand in the
No,
corner.
no, that's just the way
I see. Sorry.
I'm seated.
Okay.
I mean, the first page was very hard to find examples in the agenda that would support that we pay attention to, doing our homework, etc. So that's why there's very little there. And there were a couple of things, and I listed them at the top. I couldn't figure out, we've done a lot of hybrid updating from Beth, but I didn't know where we could put those. And the other thing was Schoology. And then I also felt, but I didn't write yet, that we've talked about wanting to improve and increase diversity, but I couldn't find diversity in here anywhere either.
So if I may, through the vice chair, so Schoology and the hybrid model, I mean, we can certainly include include a little bit in district improvement planning. I mean, that's very specific and very school based. So I don't know if that would really be part of your goals, other than that you ensure that we are continuing our district improvement plan. So that, I'm just
well,
not
and
sure.
We did most of that over the summer, which is before we started putting these notations. We started at September 2nd. And Schoology, it seems to me, software improvements to improve learning belong somewhere, but I couldn't find the right place to talk about software.
So again, that would probably come under, let me just take a quick look here.
Goal 4, maybe?
Goal number 4 is curriculum instruction and assessment. So that is probably where the hybrid model could live. I mean, there are many school committee meetings where we discussed hybrid model and explained the process and how we've gone through things with task forces, et cetera. I don't know if you want to add that with status reports with regard to the school committee meetings that talked about that.
I think we did most of that in the summer or by the end of the summer. I know we were voting by then. And since that time, I can't recall any major changes. They've just been updates from you as to when we were going to get started and how things were going and so on. And, those kind of updates, I didn't feel like there was a place for. But if you want to suggest some, I'll be glad to make the changes.
It's really up to the committee how they'd like to record Schoology and hybrid learning. I mean, again, like I said, I think that really does fall in curriculum instruction and assessment. Allocating instructional time. I think we could probably find a place for technology. I'm sure it could come somewhere in here, but I think that it could also come under professional development, because that is a key area that we're working on professional development this year. Student support is another place, because that does connect us also to partnerships and supporting learning with families. We can certainly add it there. I'm wondering if it comes under budget with regard to, not budget, sorry, under evidence is what I meant to say, on the 4th column. Because those presentations and updates have would be evidence that certain things like partnerships and services to support learning could fall. So presentation on Schoology or specifics that way. I mean, like I said, these are school committee goals as opposed to the district improvement goals. And although your goals are attached, just want to make sure that we are appropriately capturing what you feel needs to come in there.
Pauline.
There isn't a chat button, so sorry, I would have typed it in. Just as we're looking at the goals, are there other areas that we want to add into the goals? Because when these were put together, it was pre-COVID. And so some things have changed that we might want. I see that Steve added the face mask policy. in under status, but I just wonder if there are other areas that we should be looking at to add in because things have changed.
Yeah, I would suggest right away, social, emotional, and diversity.
Mhm.
I don't think they haven't jumped off the page at me, but we have certainly talked about emphasizing those this year. So that would be a change I would look to try to make.
I think those would
In
fall.
addition, by the way, rather than a modification.
No, I think those would fall under goal number 2, Roman numeral 4, again, partnerships and services, and also safety, because clearly we have the, if you're talking about social emotional learning, that's if you look under Roman numeral 4, you'll see the school committee shall strive to ensure that each school creates a safe school environment and makes effective use of system for addressing social, emotional, and health needs of its students. So that would fall under, social emotional would fall under that. The specific, I think evidence could be different, and certainly the any reporting that we do going forward can on our social emotional screener, for example, in the professional development we have could fall under here. I don't know if you want to make an adjustment to that specifically.
No, I see that language, Beth. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
That definitely addresses it. Doesn't get the word diversity in there yet. But until
No,
we
and I
had
think
something presented at a meeting, I thought the idea of this was, at least for the left-hand column, and I'm sorry, I am waving my hand around a lot. For the left-hand column, we have to have had it presented to us at a meeting to make a note of it from the agenda. Now, unless, I mean, obviously changes to the document itself don't fall into that category. So getting the word diversity in there somewhere.
so. If I may, through the vice chair, I think where we could put diversity is under access and equity, which is again goal number 2, and you'll see under the indicators for success, you'll see some language that would probably work. We could add an additional bullet, a small Roman numeral 6 that could address the diversity piece. I think Roman numeral 3 and 2 kind of address subgroups and special populations, but I think you're right. Adding a diversity piece would be helpful. So we could certainly add some language to there. Does that make sense to everyone?
And if not a separate piece, at least get the word in there somewhere.
Sure.
You know,
I would hope that it would fit in here. We could add an additional bullet, and then I think we could address it. Does that work for folks? I'm happy to draft something.
either way is fine with me as long as we address it directly.
Thank you, Steve, for bringing that up. Anything else anyone wants to consider adding, talk about? Steve's just playing with his hand again. I don't know. What are you? You're distracting me, Steve. Do you want to talk? No.
I was reading the document. I had it up, so I couldn't see
right.
my hand waving around.
All right,
Sorry.
that's okay. So, Pauline, do you want me to read through each one and have a discussion, or do you feel like we've covered what you want?
I think what might be good is if we take a look at them individually and we assess for another meeting to see if there are any additions or any adds to the status that we see. I appreciate what Steve's done.
Yeah.
If we all can just review it and see if there are any additions to this document, and then we could bring it to another meeting.
Okay.
And if I may say so, maybe some deletions. I just saw something about participation in a behavioral task force. And I am not aware that we have a behavioral task force, So there may be some things we want to delete as well.
Well, we have our student support services, which we have Pauline sits on that, right? So just change the wording maybe. Okay, that sounds good. So do we want to move on to the preliminary budget discussion for fiscal year 2022? Hi, Zona.
Arizona,
Can't hear you.
getting to be as bad as Tim at not turning on your microphone.
Did. Sorry, I thought I did. I apologize for my tardiness. I was a guest reader today, and we had technical difficulties.
So Zona, we're just wrapping up our goals, our school committee goals, and we decided we're gonna individually look at them and see if there are areas that we want to add or remove items.
Okay.
So we're gonna focus on that and have it come up at a further school committee meeting.
I'm good with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
thanks.
and if I could just close by saying sometimes the stuff in the left-hand column doesn't seem to line up with the goals. The formatting of that column is bizarre. I'll need to go back every time and make sure that the entries line up with the particular goals, because every time I put something in, it moves them up or down. So don't take those as gospel yet, but I think they should be in the neighborhood at least.
Thank you. All right. So moving on to the preliminary budget. Are you going to speak to that, Beth?
I can, but I certainly can also have you and Pauline speak to the ad hoc meeting because you were both present as well. You're happy to, to chime in. Preliminary budget, basically, like I said, we have met with all of our principals and directors. And so we have, we're putting in order all of the budget proposals for each area. So each school and each program or department. And we heard from the ad hoc budget committee meeting that we are still waiting for a bottom line for understanding where we're at. They have not given us yet the appropriation, but that things were looking up, and that the third quarter showed an increase in revenues. So that is a positive thing to consider. And my hope is that the roll forward will go forward and be accepted as is. And I think that is the case. And we're just waiting to see what additional funding we will be getting and get that bottom line. So so that's what I've got. But certainly, Pauline and Jen, if there's anything you want to add to that.
Pauline? No.
Not at this point. It was a good meeting. It was a good discussion. And I'm feeling hopeful for next year's budget.
I will say that the good news is that we do have to consider also the fact that we have a slight hold in enrollment. We are not seeing the same rise in enrollment that we have in past years. So for that reason, we don't see that we will be needing to hire a huge number of teachers to cover the enrollment purposes. It will be any staff that we hire will be additional to the needs of our programs and the needs of our schools. But when it comes to enrollment, we're in a good place in that we don't that will not be an issue for us this year. At least we hope not, but there's still plenty of time between now and the end of the year. But I think that people have been very conscientious in their planning and have considered. We have had a lot of luck with the grants that we had this year. And I think that's also a great help. We had the CARES Act money, and then we had the ESSER grant, and both of those grants we spent fully. So that was a real assistance in making sure that our budget this year was rounded out, and that helps also towards next year as the technology piece has been taken care of. So that's been great.
Any questions? comments? Beth, if we were, I'm going to think positively and optimistically, talking about returning to full in-person at some point, I think, still in regards to keeping, social distance, we would need to hire more staff.
So
Right.
if we are able to return in person, the first order of business would be to reduce the amount of feet between students, as long as it's still safe to do so. And so that's up to the CDC. It's up to the Department of Education, with the hope of a vaccine. That will help us to then be able to be able to bring more students in. The issue with hiring more staff is we need to make sure we have a place for them to teach. And currently, with the limitations we have on space based on the 6-foot distance, we wouldn't be able, we'd have to utilize every space, and that would include our cafeteria and gym space for classroom space. So the hope is that if we can make those changes in the distance, and that with a vaccine and with treatment and with the CDC guidelines and Department of Ed guidelines, we can reduce the distances, then yes, we'd be able to bring more students in, which would be great.
Thank you.
Sure.
Well, Madam Vice Chair, if I may be ever the optimist,
Yeah.
the budget we're looking at is for next September. And let's hope that we've seen some significant improvements in our ability to get kids into the buildings by then. Have you people finished saying whatever the town told you? Is it time to move on to some other thoughts?
Sure.
That's all.
Okay. I have two, one general and one specific. The specific one first, because it's kind of fun. Looking hard at whether we need more hardware budget. I can't remember whether one of the kids brought it up or the teacher, who shall remain nameless, after pointing out what my current occupation was on the school committee, asked what the school committee could do for them. And the first thing that came up, and a bunch of kids jumped in on it, was newer Chromebooks. They jumped in right away to say, we're not blaming the tech people, they've been great, but the batteries, this, and the, internet connection, that, and so on. And I don't know if NES ended up with older machines. We don't need to get into that. But the kids jumped all over. And so I wonder if there's a need to have a good hard look at our hardware budget, and maybe we need more new Chromebooks. That was the specific. The general is more than once. It's been mentioned, and I think, Beth, you've done this a couple of times, that we should be thinking conservatively for this budget, and that you're asking your administrators and so on to be thinking conservatively. And I am feeling the exact opposite, assuming hypothetically that we can get more kids into the buildings by next September. We're not going to be able to make up any significant part of what these kids have lost without bodies. There is no magical, mystical software, differentiated or otherwise, that's going to take the place of having human beings, be they teachers, teaching assistants, or other kinds of specialists, who are able to work with the kids directly, the tier 2s, the tier 3s, the ELs who have fallen behind even further than they were. Making any of this up is going to require staff. And I would like I don't want to call it our position with the town, I would like emphasis with the town to be placed on that issue. And a roll forward budget is not going to do that. So that's just my feeling as of today. I know the town needs to give us more information, and I'm looking forward to seeing that, budget presentation by Brian to the select board, etc., when the time comes.
Beth?
If I may, I hear you, Mr. Sordovic. I understand where you're coming from. I will say that yes, we have spoken about being conservative, but we have also discussed truly what our needs and wants are in this budget process. And I think you will see in the beginning of the budget presentations that begin December 1st and then will follow into the next meetings, that we have looked very carefully at what the needs are of the students. I mean, no one has held back when it comes to the necessity of interventionists and working with children and the extra needs that are necessary. So in working with principals and working with Martin, we have, I think you'll see that we have considered all of those pieces. So I hope that will come through in the presentations that we have to prepare to present to you soon. So we'll see how things go, but thank you and duly noted the two pieces that you brought up.
Well, I'll be looking forward to that. And, if we need to press the town, let me know how I can help.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Beth. The COVID update.
So I believe that you are just curious to know about where we're at with regard to COVID exposure and COVID positive cases within the schools. So we currently have, over the course of the last month, we have had 22 cases. I'm just going to pull up my information here 1 second. If you just hang on a second, so I can get that document up. We have 14 people who of the 22 who are now out of isolation, and they are fine. Everybody has done well. And then we have 8 more that are currently quarantined. Of the 22, 7, or actually I believe 8, are cohort D students. So it means that they are not in contact with others. They have been at home. So we've done remarkably well, and not one single case has been part of a transmission within school. So
Beth, are all of those numbers students, or are there some staff mixed in there as well?
So technically, I'm not supposed to tell you, but it's of all the numbers of cases, the only cases we have seen have been have been students. So
I'm not sure, you can't tell us without using names at least. The reason I ask is staffing creates an issue. We know we can't get substitutes. So I just would like to know if that is going okay.
So far, it's going okay. The challenge we have is when people do have symptoms, it could be because of a cold, it could be allergies. And so the challenge is knowing the difference, whether it's something that's a COVID symptom or something that's related to something different. So when staff is out, regardless of whether it's for regular illness or for COVID symptoms, it still means the need for substitute coverage. So we're doing everything we can. We have discussed often at the district leadership team level how to make sure that we have coverage, and how we can also reach out to others in terms of need, if we need to have folks assist in coverage with regard to lunch duties and recesses and things like that. I mean, the central office is always happy to jump in. There have been a couple of staff members that have had to that have had issues and it needed coverage. So we've done that, and it has gone fine. So my hope is, and that my messaging to staff over the course of the last few weeks has been pretty strong in that we need them back in the buildings on Monday, and that it is important that they take care of any sort of planning ahead when it comes to testing if they're traveling. We did send out a survey that showed that very few, according to the survey results, are traveling to states that are not safe states. So the point here is, the hope is that people will have planned ahead and be ready to start school on Monday the 30th.
Well, as if Massachusetts is considered a safe state, I'm not sure other places consider us to be that safe at the moment either. May I ask this as well? Month of November, the island has had, as of today, 113 new cases. Have you given thought to, I'm sure you have, and if so, in what direction, as to how you're going to be looking at things starting the day after Thanksgiving break? Any extra measures, extra thoughts, etc.? Given that, as of today, TSA has screened 4 million people to fly, and Massachusetts is still generating a couple of thousand cases a day exclusive of us. How are you looking at that first week after Thanksgiving?
Before you answer that question, can I say something? Steve, you said 113 new cases. You just meant positive cases, right?
Yes, in the month of November. I'm no longer using the 14-day period, because if the state doesn't like that, they're going to throw that out and make new rules. And I figured they can't change the months. And November has 113 on the island of positive cases as reported by NCH, not by the state, because honestly, the state statistics in the same document will have a different number of positive cases at one end of the document than they do at the other.
So
Beth, how's the week after Thanksgiving looking?
So the challenge is that we don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know what to expect. It could be a simple, an easygoing week in the sense that, people come back, they are ready to start work, and we're in good shape. It could be different. And so much of that depends on also the health of the island, in the sense that if people come back and are symptomatic, even if it's just a cold, then that's still an issue and still something we have to consider. We do have our long-term building subs that are wonderful, and we are really glad to have them. We have a small cache of daily subs that we're reaching out to, and they have been great to have us or to assist us in these days. We know we need to rely on coverage. We need to rely on each other. And if there's a need, even like I said, central office, I may be covering class to do that, but we want to make sure that there are adults with children in the building. We put together a carrying capacity document at each school to understand who we could potentially rely on to cover a classroom if necessary. So every school has that knowledge, and they know who we could rely on for coverage. The hope is that in some cases, coverage is not necessarily full substitute coverage. It's also more making sure that students are behaving and doing what a teacher who is actually teaching remotely is asking them, because the remote teaching is except in the case of our substitute our substitutes who have substitute plans. Our remote teaching experience for kids will be better than other options. So that will be helpful. That's what we're planning. We're also in the process of putting together a fuller contingency plan if for some reason we have to go remote, and as a requirement from the state. So we're putting that together and thinking about how we do that. We've been there before, but it's going to look different even than we had started off the fall. So we need to make sure that we know how that will look and how we can be prepared with resources such as even materials and such. So how can we get paper and pencil and markers into kids' hands and things like that? So we're working on all of that to make sure that we have a solid plan in place.
Yeah, part of the reason I ask, if I may, is do you know what the hospital's latest feeling is about how long it's going to take to get tests back? I mean, we were up to 72 hours last I checked, and I'm hoping it doesn't stay that way.
So it's really up to the labs, not the hospital, because the hospital will send the tests to labs on the mainland. So that's part of the problem, is the processing doesn't happen here on island. It happens on the mainland. So currently it's around 72 hours. So that's where, again, my strong encouragement to teachers has been plan ahead, make sure you know that it's going to take longer. We cannot, we need people to be in the buildings and be ready to work on Monday. So that's been the message.
I have to leave in just about 5 minutes. Can I just ask a couple of questions real quick, if you don't mind? One thing I'm just wondering, have we thought about being a little bit more proactive? And I know we probably have families very upset, but knowing that and relying on the fact that we're asking families to not gather for Thanksgiving, but in our heart of hearts know that families will be. Have we thought about proactively, going fully remote for a week or two after break? Because I'll tell you honestly, I mean, and I've mentioned this to you, and I spoke to Manny Vassal, but for me, I'm keeping my kids home after Thanksgiving to go fully remote. Because of this safety issues. And I've spoken to some healthcare providers that thought it was a proactive, beneficial move on a district who decides to do that as well. So was there any thought to that?
So of course, and yes, we have thought about it, but the issue is I'm getting strong pushback from the state to not do that. So districts are being told that we really shouldn't be. We need to have kids in school, and that seems to be the general message. Most school districts I know are doing, again, the superintendents that I've had discussions with are not doing preemptive closures because they have the capacity to be able to handle situations, but their communities they've worked with their health departments and they can do that. But again, I only speak with a small group in my new superintendent induction program. So those are the folks that I hear from often. But when we have commissioners calls and commissioners meetings, it's clear that the message is that we should be doing everything we can to keep schools open. I mean, our safety protocols is really what saves us. We do not have school transmission because of our safety protocols. So the important piece is, even if we have, and also our COVID liaison, Sarah Brooks has been wonderful, and she speaks with students' parents, she speaks with students and with staff. And so just having those pieces in place are really keeping us safe. We have, and the interesting part, I believe too, is that several of the cases within our school community have been folks who don't even come into the building. So it's not students that are in the building or staff that are in the building. It's what's happening outside the building, which is causing the contagion and the exposure.
Right, which concerns me after Thanksgiving break. Rapid testing, I saw that Nantucket is not a part of that. Can you speak to that?
Sure. So rapid testing is kind of pool testing, which basically means it is a quick way to find out if someone in a large group of individuals might have COVID-19. The problem is there are way too many false negatives and way too many false positives to assure that this is the route to take. And I would say the majority of the districts I've spoken to on the Cape and Islands have decided against it. I spoke with all of our nurses to consider whether or not it would be worthwhile for us. And all of them believed that this was not the route to take. It is, we need to know who would give the test, and then what it would mean when when you give a test to 50 individuals and we don't know who it is that is showing that there may be COVID-19 virus. So that means all of the 50 people would have to go and get the PCR test. So for that reason, it's good for surveillance, but it is not something that the nurses support. And
I gotta say, it sounds pretty bizarre if you don't
It
know who it
does.
is.
Why would
You
they
gotta
implement
send
something like
50
this at all?
people because one person might be positive. Yikes.
so that's the challenge around it. So it is not, I mean, again, I don't know if it would be a 50 people. It could be that there is it could be a classroom. So that would be 15 or 16. But the fact of the matter is it doesn't seem feasible, and it doesn't seem like it will really help us, because ultimately the false positives and false negatives, the percent effectiveness just doesn't seem right. Perhaps it works at a place like a nursing home or a care facility where you have the ability to test people regularly or often. So, it just didn't seem feasible for us. And in a lot of districts, I'd say probably about 75% of the districts across the state are not participating. So,
Thank you, Beth.
You have to confirm the test. If you get a positive, you have to confirm it with PCR. And if you get a negative, you have to confirm it with PCR. It's just not reliable.
Makes no sense.
It makes no sense, but there were 134 districts that were electing it, but it makes no sense because you have to confirm it with a PCR. So why the hell do it?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Last question. Are we offering Interscholastic for our winter sports?
So I will defer to offer new information. But yes, the MIAA has approved Interscholastic. So I'm happy to include that in updates on December 1st. So that this does not fall under not being on the agenda, so to speak, of the workshop. But yes, we will be looking at Interscholastic for the winter.
Thank you so much. I just can't imagine our students traveling at this point. So
And we'll see what Chris thinks. Other schools might not be willing to come here as they were before, but right. I want to agree with Jen's concerns about traveling off island.
Right. Thank you, Beth. Sorry, everyone, that I have to leave, but I'm so excited to read to the first grade class. Pauline, do you mind taking over from here? Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Jen.
Any other comments or questions before we adjourn? Okay, thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second, Tim. Zona, may I have your vote?
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you December 1st.
Thank you all.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
Safe Thanksgiving.
Yes.